All right. Hello, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the New Shoreham Town Council to order. Today is Wednesday, February 21st. It is 7:04 p.m. Just so that you know, we did not have a closed session at 6:30. We didn't have a quorum. Martha was unable to make it, and as Neil was also not here. I did want to mention to people who came for agenda item number 5, which is regarding 513 accessory dwelling units, whatever term you want to use. We throw around the slang of 513s, but really it's about accessory dwelling units. Our land use solicitor wanted to take one more look at how making sure that it fits with the bigger zoning thing that we're required to do under state statute. And God bless her, she's away this week, so she didn't get to it. Yes. I am. Yes. Turn it up. Yeah, it's on. Is that better? Is that better? Better? Yes, thank you. Sorry. Yes, this is the mic for the person who can't keep his head straight. Sorry. So tell me to turn it up. So anyway, number 5, we're going to hold. And I say that just in case you came here, solely to for that public hearing. I didn't want you to wait until we got to it. So I would make a motion to convene the Board of License Commissioners. Be seconded, please. Motion is made and second. All those in favor of convening the Board of License Commissioners? Very well. We're now convened as the Board of License Commissioners. Millie, what do we have to do?
So this evening you were supposed to be here. You had continued the Draper Garden Lot application to tonight. They have subsequently withdrawn the application, so that's no longer in front of you. But what still is in front of you is the caps, setting the caps on the liquor licenses for the year. Right. And that's been continued because the garden lot was still in flux at that time.
Right. And I know we talked about a whole bunch of these. I must admit that I don't recall that we landed anywhere in particular, but Molly, I know you did a lot more research than anybody on these things. So,
well, I would say that we probably want to approve it, the numbers that we previously approved,
yes.
less 1 in that category, right?
Correct. What is in front of you? It includes only the licenses that have been authorized.
So that document that's on ClerkBase, what we would make a motion to approve is the column that says cap.
That's correct.
Yes.
And that's equivalent to the number issued.
Yes.
Okay, and just to clarify, the garden lot was which license?
It was a BVL.
Okay.
Which was previously the Cookie Company.
Mm-hmm.
And so that would be removing that BVL from the cap if you choose to do so.
So then we would be left with 1 BVL holder.
Correct.
And so the cap no one would be losing a license who currently has one. Understood. Are there any comments about that before we move on? Kim, you look like
So we'll make a motion that we approve the list as presented.
Great. Is there a second, Tristan? Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The caps are adopted for this year. Make a motion to adjourn the Board of License Commissioners meeting.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And we are adjourned. Now I would convene the town council. First item is public comment. Is there any public comment? Chris, come aboard.
Chris Blaine, I'd like to make a suggestion to the council. It was a year ago that the situation down at the mansion property was brought to the town's attention. Building a wall on town land. I know that they had talked about surveying the property line. Perhaps have the road crew go down there and clear the brush between the two concrete monuments. And just for the council's information, I know I sent a picture to a couple of the council members, the iron pipe and concrete rebar that marked the corner of that property in question that is now gone missing. Almost an elf down
Yeah.
there.
Chris, thank you for raising that, so that we have it on the record and check it, but, thank you. Any other public comment before we move along? Or things that aren't on the agenda generally. So when we get to agenda items, if you would like to speak to them, you'll have a chance to do that. Is that clear enough? We're moving to the consent agenda, and I would like to remove item 3C, approve project management service Peregrine Group for the public safety facility. Are there any questions? And what we'll do is we'll approve those things that are acceptable on the consent agenda and then move directly to this Peregrine Group issue. Are there any other concerns or regarding the consent agenda? And if not, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda except for item 3C?
Motion to approve, except item C.
Yes. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. That is adopted. So I'll provide my reason for taking this off. There is no number. Look, I'm all in on the public safety building. I'm all in on having professionals do that. But the letter that is on clerk base that we received, near as I can tell, has no number in it. We have no idea what this OPM is going to cost. And the second line is, I love Amy Land. Amy Land recommends the funds for the OPM come from the contingency account. Well, we need more than this in order for this to be a reasonable and legitimate request for us to discuss and opine on. So what I would say is, look, I get it. We're going to need professionals, sort of project runners at some point, but we need a more robust look and a more robust request.
Yeah, the engagement letter, the complete document was originally on a clerk base and it's not there now.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Honestly, if I missed this when the draft, because I would have pulled it off. And I'm sort of picked at myself for not picking it up.
My question about this was also, does this need to go out to bid, and did this go out to bid before we settled on this company?
So I'll do my best to answer that. In a good way, the state maintains a master price agreement for particular services so that municipalities don't have to go out to bid for every single thing. So basically these companies like Peregrine can apply to whatever the Department of Administrative Services and post a master list of what their rates are. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't go to bid, but I think it would be okay if we were to hire Peregrine from a bidding perspective. Tristan, do you have any comment about that, or do you want to we're just going to hold it. We'll just move on. Okay. Thank you, Marianne. Oh, sorry, Bill. Sorry.
If I, just to speak to this, Marianne did send me a cover letter for that agreement, that the agreement contract. And I sent it on to Clerk Base. It appears that what they did was instead of adding it to the other document, that they overwrote it with the document.
Oh,
I didn't
gotcha.
notice that until you pointed it out just now. And unfortunately, when we're working with a vendor like that, sometimes things like that do happen. And I'm sorry I didn't do the checkup on that this morning.
I think, by the way, that that's something that probably merits its own agenda item because it's a very large project. It's a very important project. And I think letting the community know kind of at every step of the way what decisions we're going to make would really make some sense.
The document that was up there, is that going to come back or are you gonna?
Yeah, no, this is all coming back because, yeah, this will all come back and my preference would be to have it as an agenda item, that doesn't just deal with Peregrine, but sort of where we are and where the community is on it. So item 4, I'm not going to read the entire agenda item. For those of you who were maybe listened to our last work session or have been keeping abreast of the planning board. Last year, the legislature passed I would describe it as comprehensive, or at least extensive, if not comprehensive, update to the state's planning and zoning statutes, which every municipality has to comply with. So we are going to have a series, and fortunately, Michelle and Allison are here, and Ashley. Sorry, I didn't see Ashley. They have been working to make sure that change our ordinances where they need to be changed in order to fit with the new state mandate. This is a monumental undertaking. If I recall correctly, Allison and Ashley, this is one of probably a few different packages that will, sort of sets that we'll have to do. We did have Allison and Ashley and Karen Browning, our land use solicitor, do a work session for the council because it is kind of big and at least for a layman like me, kind of confusing. So anyway, I don't know, Allison, if you were thinking about starting, but
Sure.
Maybe just a couple of minutes walk through before we get to the public hearing. I just want people to understand.
Correct.
Thank
Yeah. This is part of addressing last year's sweeping changes relating to zoning and subdivision laws at the state level. So we are fortunate to have Weston and Sampson, Ashley Sweet from Weston and Sampson's here tonight, but we received some funding through the state to help us. Ashley's firm is helping draft the legislative the updates. And so this is part of tier 1, divided up into tier 1 and tier 2 for the zoning amendments that will come before the town council. So there's also subdivision regulations that the planning board is working on. So for tonight, there's adaptive reuse, development plan review, unified development review, and modifications. So Ashley's gonna just give a brief, because I know we did dive into it at the workshop, so she can provide a brief overview of those amendments, and then we can help field some questions from the
Thank you.
council and the public.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Go, Ashley, go.
Good evening, everyone. Is there a specific order that you want me to go in for these? Or
I
I
would
can
love-
just read
would
them in
love-
the order they're on the agenda?
That's fine.
Okay. So as
Well-
Allison, yep, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so as Allison said, we've been working with the staff and with the planning board to draft the required amended language. The first section, let's see how you have these listed. Special use permits. So the requirement there is related to changes in the language in the state law that require that if you have a use that's listed as a special use permit use, that it has to have specific and objective criteria, or the use is permitted by right if you do not have that specific and objective criteria. You are in a much better place than most other communities in that you have a very small amount of special use permit uses. Some communities have close to 100. You only have a handful. So we worked with the planning board to identify the uses that you do have listed as special use permits, and then made sure that if you did not have specific and objective criteria already, that we worked to draft some specific and objective criteria for those uses that did not have them. Would you want me to just give an overview of everything and then you can open it up for discussion, or do you want me to pause after each one?
I think that's fine, Ashley. We're perfectly capable here of interrupting you if we have questions.
Okay, please do. So the next section is the technical review committee. This is something that has existed in state law as an optional committee that can be established. It remains optional. It's not mandated that you have a technical review committee, but they really, the importance of their function has increased with the shift of responsibility from the planning board to the administrative officer for decision-making purposes on these applications. And so we did work with the planning board and the staff to draft a section in both your zoning and your subdivision that establishes a technical review committee, identifies the membership of that committee, establishes the administrative officer as the one who presides over the meeting, the chair of the committee. And we established which types of projects can be reviewed by the technical review committee. And the real purpose behind this is to ensure that the administrative officer has some technical assistance in reviewing and deciding on applications. The added benefit is that the technical review committee can make recommendations not just to your administrative officer, but also to your planning board. So the planning board, in the applications that they've retained authority over, can also ask the technical review committee to provide their review and recommendation on the technical aspects of an application. For development plan review, the structure and the process of development plan review has changed with the law. So we have amended the components of your development plan review, and the piece that you're seeing in the zoning ordinance is really just establishing development plan review and then sending anyone using development plan review over to the subdivision regulations. There's a couple of these that have a companion component in the subdivision regulations. Development plan review is one of those. So we did actually extract large sections of text from the zoning ordinance for development plan review. Those are not disappearing. They're moving over to the subdivision regulations. The idea being that the zoning ordinance establishes the review itself as a type of review process, and that the subdivision regulations is what governs the process itself and the standards by which the decisions are made, because those decisions are made by the planning board. So we've moved that into their regulations. The section on modifications, we made amendments to that to make that match the state law. Modifications used to be something that was allowed, and this is the process by where up to 25% of a dimensional requirement can gain relief from that dimensional requirement by an administrative process with the zoning official. So we amended the section there to make sure that it was consistent with the new state law requirements. We drafted a new section called Unified Development Review. This is something that did exist on the books previously. It was an optional process. Now it's mandatory that every municipality has Unified Development Review. And this is when there's a land development project before the planning board, and that land development project requires some sort of relief, whether it's through a variance or a special use permit or a use variance. Now, instead of going over to the zoning board to gain that relief or that special use permit, the applicant stays with the planning board, and the planning board is authorized to grant that specific relief as part of the development or subdivision application.
Right.
So we drafted that as a new section.
Hey, Ashley, can I interrupt for
Yes.
1 second?
Please
Because
do, yes.
something just occurred to me, and I wanted to mention to Marianne and Millie, and Jen's not here. Given that this new statute, and therefore our new ordinances, vests a lot of authority with the local land use officer, I think it's going to be important to work on some real transparency around what's been filed and what's been granted. Because I think we could get into a situation where and I understand there's still notice provisions, et cetera, but I think it's an opportunity to really sort of figure out on the website how we can so that people have a place they can go to see what was granted administratively, because everyone is used to a system where an agenda is published in the paper or on Clerkbase. If you're concerned about it, you can go to the planning board meeting, you can come up, you can say, now we, as a statutory requirement, are gonna be giving setback relief, for example, that may honk some people off. Who knows? So it just, I think it would serve us well to be as transparent about that as we possibly can.
So I'm pretty sure when we were talking to Jen about a different topic, she said, what's the name of the OpenGov? So simple, and it won't stick in my head. But on OpenGov, I believe that anybody can look up an application. Is that correct?
It's correct for building applications. I don't know whether planning and zoning applications have made it over to that
Interesting.
OpenGov. I don't believe that they have.
Interesting.
So that would be a step.
Committee process.
Right. I
But
just-
it
it's-
might be appropriate to
So
try to
this is
move
where-
this into.
It's
into
not
that
something we're
program.
going to settle tonight, but
No.
it's absolutely the kind of thing that I will forget. So I guess.
No, but it's a good point, right?
You know.
Because if you are an abutter or a neighbor to something going on, you're
Sure.
gonna feel like this got fast tracked.
Right.
If you're thinking that we're using the old process and not this state-enabled new process,
Yeah. Yeah.
is for people who understand the process as it is now, it's gonna mess them up.
Yeah.
So.
Great. Sorry, Ashley. Thank you very much. Allison?
No problem. I think Allison.
I was just going to offer that in some cases, as a practice, the administrative officer could place on the next public agenda of the planning board what administrative actions have
Oh, that's interesting.
has she taken, so like almost like a report In
That's
some
a
cases
really
that is
interesting
required.
idea.
So like if the administrative subdivision is approved, it would go on the agenda and say, I took this action, I approved this. So, you know, it could be more broadly applied as a practice for those modifications.
That's a really interesting idea, Allison.
The other thing that I can offer on that is with the establishment of a technical review committee. If the technical review committee is reviewing an application, that's a publicly posted agenda. It's a public meeting and
Great.
someone can attend and listen and learn about the application. And really it's up to the administrative officer who chairs the technical review committee if they will accept public comment, whether it be oral or in writing.
Terrific. Thank you.
Can I just, maybe I missed it, because, but the technical review committee, that's all new, right?
Mhm.
And,
Yes.
There was language in the ordinance, existing language. It just wasn't currently, it wasn't utilized. Like there was an option to utilize a technical review committee and form a committee, but it hadn't been utilized frequently in recent history. So this would, because of the need, as the state law, like as Ashley explained it, because of all the administrative reviews that a lot of projects that had gone to planning board are no longer allowed to go to planning. So utilizing this technical review committee, which is allowed, will help the community have a thorough review of applications.
and it says that it's a minimum of 3 members from this list of suggestions. That's appointed by the town council? That's a question for you. That's town council would appoint or decide who's on that committee?
If I may, I can
Oh,
probably
sure.
help out. We actually allowed the planning board the authority to appoint, by statute, you are required to have the administrative officer as the chair. As Ashley has described, that is in the statute itself. And the statute itself says that there must be a minimum of 3 members. So that's what that ordinance reflects. And it states that the municipality has to be the one to create the TRC. So that's what this ordinance is doing. It's creating the TRC. And then the members themselves, beyond those that are statutorily required, will be appointed by the planning board.
Okay, but the head of the planning board is one of the members. And then we need 2 more. Is that what you're saying, or am I misunderstanding?
The administrative officer is the chairman.
Okay,
That's Jen.
Jen. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Ashley?
So the last section that we created is just a section that establishes land development projects as a type of application, and those are governed in the subdivision regulations in terms of what qualifies as minor and major land development and what the process for review is and who the permitting authority is. So this section in the zoning ordinance just establishes them as a type of application. And I believe that that's all the sections that you have on your agenda.
Any questions? Any questions from the audience? Susan, come.
Susan Bush, I would just like to ask on the decisions by the administrative officer, does someone who disagrees have the same right of appeal that exists under the current zoning regulations? Like,
Yeah, could you hear that, Ashley? Because I think
I believe the question was about an appeal.
Is your mic on, Susan? Is the green light on? Great, okay.
the appeals process, is it the same as it's always been?
No, the appeals process has also changed. Appeals of the administrative officer on an application for land development will go directly to Superior Court. So the zoning board does not sit as the appellate board for the administrative officer or the planning board any longer. These appeals will go directly to court. And I think you do raise an interesting question. The right to appeal didn't change. The issue I think we're going to run into is that when the administrative officer is making these decisions, they're not being made in a public forum. And so the 20-day appeal window may have long passed when someone realizes that something has been approved because now a shovel has gone in the ground. So, this also speaks to the point you made earlier about people not knowing that things have been approved. So
Right.
that I think there is a real concern there about people's ability to appeal decisions of an administrative officer, which don't happen in a public forum. And so, your point to making those as public as possible, that those decisions have been made is a real point to make.
So in follow-up to that, I thought Allison had a great idea about ensuring that they were on planning and zoning agendas. But I think we may need to do something in addition to that, given how tight the window is.
The timeframe, yeah, that
yeah,
doesn't address
yeah.
the appeal
Thank
concern.
you.
Yeah,
That was.
yeah. Thank you, Susan. This is not an insignificant change for us, and not just for us, but for towns around the state. Are there any other questions? Anybody? For some reason, I'm not thrilled about this, but that and $1 will get me a cup of coffee. The fact is, these are statutory provisions. Not the whole thing, but there are, I feel like when the state passes something like this, and it's one of those, sometimes I think bad anecdotes make bad law, where you have some towns that are really kind of, whatever, using their zoning or planning rules to figure out ways to push affordable housing out, and those anecdotes can sometimes drive a bad statute. But having said that, I guess I would make a motion to approve this new regulation, and I would, do you want me to read the whole thing, Millie? No? Okay, thank you. I didn't want to, but I also didn't want to be admonished. And I would, with my motion, also include thanks to Allison, Michelle, Ashley, Jen, et cetera, because I know how hard you've worked. So
Before you make that motion, if you could close the.
close the public hearing. I make a motion to close the public hearing. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. And I would make a motion to approve the new zoning ordinance as written. Any discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
And I know
Thank
we'll
you.
be seeing you
we'll be
relatively
back
frequently
again.
over the next several months. So thank you.
All right.
Item number 5, as I said at the outset, is being held. Item number 6.
I think that, I believe you may have to open that public hearing and then
Oh, okay.
continue it.
Happy to.
Because
I would make a motion to open because you'd have to renotice it. I would make a motion to open the public hearing on item number 5. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Public hearing is open. Now we need to postpone this to a date certain.
Yes.
I would make a motion to postpone it to.
Was it March 20th? Was that the date? I think that she said that she needed the month to have a peek at that.
Yep, the amendments were literally just passed within this past week to the ADU statute.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
so that's what we're looking at
The
here.
House passed
Very
it.
frustrated that we didn't know that. Okay, so I would make a motion to postpone this item to March 20th
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
at 7 p.m. Town Hall. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. You heard Tristan second, right? Opposed, no. Ayes have it. That is, and then I would make a motion to close the public hearing? No.
No, it
has to
remains
stay
open.
All right, so I need to, but I can still open a public hearing on item number 6, Millie? Oh, we're
Number 6,
setting
you're
hearings.
setting a
Okay.
public hearing.
All
Thank
right, we need a motion to set a public hearing, for, the solar energy, systems, new ordinance. What date would that be?
Yeah, March
That would
20th.
also be March 20th. I may make a motion to schedule that for March 20th.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is scheduled, and we also need to set a public hearing date for Chapter 8 licenses, short-term rental regulations. That too would be March 20th. I would make a motion to set that public hearing for March 20th.
Second.
Yeah. We have the same I mean, it's a really good question. We have the same problem that we have every year, right? And that part of that is, that, things start to accelerate.
Right.
And so I would like to keep them all on March 20th. And if we need to change that, we can.
It's like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a long meeting. And it should be, that's okay.
Right, the short-term rental will certainly be a long.
Yeah. That's okay. So that's set for March 20th. Did we vote on that? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Item number 8, discuss and act on a resolution requesting the Rhode Island Legislature correct the Manistee Tribal History resolution. Millie, thank you so much for all of the wordsmithing that you did on this. Really appreciate it. The way that I would describe this, and Marianne, please, you're welcome. But the way that I would describe this is an update to what was, how shall we say this? Not a very kind, not the previous resolution adopted by the legislature was not
I would just say,
phrased the way that it should have been.
appreciate. It's a good way to.
What do you think? Any comments?
No, I just, I don't think this conflicts, or does it? I don't think it does conflict with the jurisdiction that the Narragansett Indian tribe has over. I mean, this recently when there were like remains found, right?
Yeah.
That gets, that's under the jurisdiction of the Narragansett tribe, but this doesn't affect that. This is more of a clearing up.
And if I could
The
just
history,
interject.
right?
Absolutely. This is
Yeah.
about the Manistee history.
I'm stepping into the unknown here, but I
Oh,
don't want to
it's-
make a mistake.
Exactly.
This is as a measurement, right? So we're talking about the Manistee tribal tribe as a separate entity from the Narragansett. And then just maps, well, it shares the nation's tribes. And this issue about whether it exists or not.
Just use the
I'm sorry.
microphone. So
And it's
okay, so
also
I can hear
been
you.
kind of
Thanks.
received and accepted by the island for years. We've only just renewed our stewardship of our island, our responsibilities, I call it. And we've been working with the Historical Society. I have a letter from Kevin McBride. I kind of just tested the waters myself, and I wanted to address what the community's, I wanted to address what the community's, concerns would be. I don't want to leave any question about whether we have a right or a responsibility to steward the lands of the island. And I just want you to know that we're here to do that. And we work in conjunction with the Narragansetts, the Wampanoags, the Mashpees. If any of you had an opportunity to communicate with the Historical Society for the last few years, for actually the last 6 years, we've been working and doing cultural events at the Historical Society. And the Narragansetts have been participating with us on those projects. There's no issue with those. So just as a matter of correction, though, in terms of protection, based on that last scenario that we found just recently, I kind of looked at what are our roles and responsibilities and what are we ready to deal with, and obviously not ready to handle that. And so we respect and appreciate the federally recognized tribes coming to Island to protect our interest in that space. And we work collaboratively when we're allowed to do so. And the conversation that I had with Charlotte, who is the state preservation officer, I'm sorry, I'm speaking to all of you, not necessarily the individual.
Yeah.
But Charlotte shared what the roles are and responsibilities are, and we'll be communicating kind of as we learn more. But that they actually now just implemented a different set of notifications for protection as the Mashpee Wampanoag, the Mashpee and the Aquinnah Wampanoags have demonstrated an interest in supporting our organizations and the tribal interest on Island, that she's going to be notifying all three of them and not just the Narragansetts to protect our interest in that space. So in terms of authority, it's not really authority, but a responsibility by federal regulation that a federally recognized tribe address the unmarked graves or the unearthed artifacts and address those needs and the appropriate repatriation. Not necessarily that they, own the responsibility of bringing it to their space, but what is the appropriate cultural repatriation process? So two things they'll do in that scenario is, what is it that they found? And then what will they do with it? And that is why they go to the federally recognized tribe, because generally it's under federal protection. We don't have a state protection. There is a state rule where it allows the cities and towns to provide interest protections for the descendant local tribes. And we can certainly, investigate what our role in that space would be when we're ready and happily work with you to do that.
I think you sense the, the challenge for us is so much of the statutory and procedural construct of this flows from federal recognition, that we're in this weird place. And I hope, over the last several weeks, the five of us have demonstrated that we want to be as helpful as we possibly can be and as supportive as we possibly can be.
Much
So,
appreciated.
Thank you for your work. I can make a motion to approve this resolution. Tristan? All those in favor of adoption of this resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Marianne. Appreciate it. All right, discuss and act on hunting calendar for 24-25 hunting season and review of the hunting calendar for the 2025-2026 season. And we have A, potential weekend hunting January 11 and 12, archery only, and B, concurrent deer and pheasant hunting. So I think I'm just going to open to conversation first, and then we'll, Marianne, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah.
Good, please, you go.
So what I would like to provide is, and keep in mind, hunt season for this year just ended, so some of these numbers may change slightly. And I want to be clear on that. This year was one of the biggest harvests that the island has seen in such time. In speaking with DEM, there was a total of 394 deer harvest. Of those 394, 318 was from Rhode Islanders. And that included what they call 28 successful hunters. So that means 28 harvest a deer, and 8 of them were from Block Island. Block Island residents, there were 3 Block Island residents that collectively, one took 102, another one 100, another 148. So it's 250 of the 394 or of the 318 of Rhode Islanders that was harvested by Block Island residents. Including other states, there was a total of 12 states, including Rhode Island, that made their way out to Block Island: Illinois, Mass, Maine, North Carolina, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Vermont. Also, I would like to be clear on one thing that has come up on a few occasions. As the council is well aware, I meet with DEM, the director of DEM periodically. And in recent meetings that I've had with him, I specifically asked that they try to get some folks out here for enforcement during the deer hunting season. And this year they did have enforcement out here. They made a total of, I think it was 5 visits. And they provided 1 violation and 2 warnings to hunters. And for the most part, they say the hunters are doing a pretty good job out here.
Okay.
So I want to provide some backdrop of information that we do have at this point. They do the lottery. They had 24 slots available, a total of 75 individuals, as well as groups participated in it. There was only 1 Block Islander that participated. However, that particular person was not selected from the lottery. And the lottery is handled by DEM also. So I just wanted to provide the backdrop of some of that information that has been asked and has come up in previous years as to what's happening. And like I say, some of these numbers may change slightly based on final counts that DEM will do.
Great. Any comments from Craig?
Hi, I'm Craig Fontaine, and I'm here to represent BIRA, the Block Island Residents Association. I don't have a particular position, or we don't have a particular position on support or opposition to weekend hunting per se, but what I'd like to do is give you the benefit of information we received from a survey of our membership concerning the concern for deer, which was largely a result of concern for Lyme disease, and the wish to cull the herd and eradicate deer if we can. I know that's a bigger project and a different discussion, but we are some 500 members, and we had a very significant response from both island full-time and part-time residents about the issue of deer, and the vast majority were in favor of culling the herd, and were about equally split in terms of their opinions on weekend hunting at all versus no weekend hunting. We have committed $1,500 in the past for support of the tail fees, and we committed an additional $3,000 this year, which shows that our membership is very interested in the issue. And so we would hope that by providing a little focus on the issue, because it's of such concern to the organization, we just wanted to bring attention to the town council. And if any of you would like to see a copy of the survey, specific questions and specific responses, but the deer population issue was very big, and there wasn't significant opposition compared to support for weekend hunting.
Terrific. Thank you, Craig. Anybody else? Sosha?
I am concerned about weekend hunting. First of all, if you start with 1, the general public will not remember which one. Secondly, those of the tourists that come here on the weekends might be frightened and stay away because of the hunting being allowed, and they won't know which weekend. The advantage of weekend hunting could be an increase in the culling of the herd. But personally, I'm against it. I like to know for sure that all weekends are available for hiking the trails, that I don't have to worry about which weekends are not.
So what if it were only on private property? Would that matter?
I do trespass a bit.
I'm just curious. You know,
I didn't think about that.
yeah, that's. Hey, Sue, thank you.
Could I just quickly
Yeah, please.
clarify, since Keith brought that up, that I'm not sure if the proposal has been, I'm not sure like how BIRA sent it out. The The proposal is for one weekend, archery only, and only on private property. So just so that everybody's clear about what the proposal is.
Right,
Is that
what's
correct?
before us, yes,
Okay.
right.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Sue.
Right.
Go ahead, Sue.
Susan Gibbons, thanks. And I feel differently a little bit, having read that the current proposal is only for one weekend. However, I do want to kind of go on record by saying that if this is a step towards regular weekend hunting, I have significant concerns about that even on private property, because the places that people walk, the roads that run in between private property, the places that people recreate on Block Island are very close to private property. And I am a strong supporter of hunting, and in fact, a strong supporter of deer eradication. So I'm not against taking more deer at all. But I do think that our population and our visitors deserve a couple of days per week that orange flag is not up and people are not concerned about hunting where they're walking. One weekend feels different, but is it a beginning?
Mhm,
That I don't know.
mhm.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anybody else? Hey, Robin, thank you for coming.
Robin Villa. My concern is that weekend hunting is going to open up, I think, another can of worms. And I know that a lot of people that don't live on Block Island would like to come and hunt. So they'd like to come on weekends. I find that when I do see hunters that are not where they're supposed to be, they're not usually from here. And you know, I feel like I have a lot more confidence in island hunters or people who are comfortable with Block Island. And weekends, I feel like we still have a lot of people that like to be outside. And, you know, if you have a bunch of people that don't really know where they are, that can become more dangerous. Also, Pete was just showing me something. There's been a kind of an alarming thing happening, and that's people are from off island are advertising for hunting tours on Block Island. And that kind of commerce around our hunting, I don't see that weekends is going to create a scenario where we get so many more deer that it becomes productive for us culling the herd, you know, eradicating the deer, whatever it is. I just don't think weekends are going to add enough, you know, deer killing to make it worthwhile, endangering people and bringing people here to hunt that maybe would be better off not being here.
Yeah, I actually personally, the idea of a competent guide bringing people out is more appealing to me than individuals.
A competent guide, yes.
Stumbling about, so.
But the person that's advertising doesn't live here, is renting a place on Block Island and bringing people here. We don't know how competent he is.
We don't.
So
And
that just brings up a whole nother, the commerce around that makes me nervous.
So I don't want to veer off too much because it's not an agenda item, but I'm going to tell you that I called that person and had a very long conversation with them. And just to put you at ease, that person hunts here quite a bit. So is familiar with the island.
But
So
it's a business and that's a whole other thing.
totally understand
But
why
thank you.
people don't love that idea, but I just want to say it's not an agenda item. We can't really veer off into that.
Yeah, I don't want to get
No, it's
into it,
it's
but
worth-
it's just, it was something to
It's-
think
yeah.
about. Is it going
Totally.
to open that can of worms?
yeah,
Thank you.
Chris, come.
Chris Blaine. I'd like to start by saying that this proposal in different forms has reared its ugly head since 1974 when the state first came out here. I was at that meeting. This is a proverbial camel's nose under the tent. And if anyone thinks that this is only going to be proposed one weekend archery only from now on, you're very wrong. What'll happen is it'll be so successful that next year we'll have to have a lot of weekends. It's going to morph into something. There hasn't been a season of deer hunting going back into the damage permit days yet when weekend hunting has been allowed. It's been the one constant that everybody knows. The number one reason that we were always told the kids are out of school. So I don't think you need 15 reasons not to have this. I don't think you need 2 reasons not to have it. I think one reason, the kids are not in school.
Mhm.
The same reason we don't have hunting on school vacation days of any form. And if anyone thinks that a crossbow isn't as lethal as a firearm now, out to 100 yards, and that's what archery is talking about.
Mhm.
You can shoot a 2-inch group with a modern crossbow at 100 yards. I've done it. That's 300 feet. And bear in mind that the safety zone for archery is 200 feet.
Mhm.
So there's some changes that need to be made. That's a story for another day.
Mhm.
But I would urge this council to reject the proposal because you need to see it for what it is. The camel's nose under the tent. And if you let this genie out of the bottle, you will never get it back in because it'll be forever referenced that it was successful once. All we have to do is just expand it a little bit. 394 deer taken without weekend hunting should tell everybody sitting at the table that it's not really necessary. That's an extremely high number of deer. And you have no enforcement here. So multiply the number of hunters on any given day by 4 and see what kind of conflict you have with the non-hunting public that are out here for recreation. And I think myself, I've talked to the people who are generous enough to give permission, landowners who allow the hunting. And without exception, they've all said you do not support weekend hunting. Houses on Block Island now, the water is left on, the electric meter is left in, the heat is turned down low. People can come out here on a moment's notice for the weekend. And now we have broadband.
Mhm.
So more people are coming. Where kids felt that they might be sacrificing something before because they didn't have high-speed internet. Now everybody has high-speed internet. People working from home. Take a walk around during the hunting season. There are a lot more homes occupied now, whether they're rented or
Do
not.
do you have some sense of how, of what happens on the mainland? Because they do have weekend hunting on the mainland. I'm just curious what they found there. Do you know?
There's about 75,000 acres over there of management areas in addition to private property. And everybody that wants to hunt that doesn't have permission can go there.
It
We don't-
doesn't quite answer what I was asking. Like what, I'm.
Well, they have something called enforcement. And out here, I know, we made a big deal of the fact we had enforcement here 5 times.
Mhm.
So you do the math. 5 times divided by, what's the percentage? 81 hunting days,
Mhm.
5 with enforcement. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to figure out that's a pretty low percentage. The Black Rock Lottery hunt was supposed to have hunters here half the time. That's a 4-week hunt. That would have been 2 weeks of DEM presence here. We've never gotten it yet. We never will.
Mhm.
The deer season closes on the mainland January 31st. Why not ask the DEM why, if there's no deer hunting on the mainland in February? I asked the question, you know what they told me? Well, we still have trapping. Trapping, really? Trappers are just about extinct like the dinosaurs. Very few trappers left. None that I know of on Block Island. But if you had enforcement here, which you won't get, especially on a weekend, I don't see the benefit to trying this because this is only a trial balloon. This isn't a one-off deal. I will guarantee you with certainty that next year, if you were to allow this, that the proposal would be expanded. And the year after, it would be expanded more until you are up. And mind you, whatever you do, the state and federal lands will mirror because they go by what Block Island does. So if you decide to allow that weekend hunting, you can say it's only to be on private land, but they mirror what the town does.
Hmm.
And they mirror our regulations. So I would urge the council to reject this out of hand. This is one person's request. And I see more people in this room tonight by a factor of about 5. I don't know what kind of letters you got, if you got any correspondence.
Got both sides.
Okay. Anyway, thank you.
Anybody else? Chris, how are you, man?
Chris Littlefield. I'm really against weekend hunting. I think we should have less hunting during the week than we have now. And I was really interested in those statistics in terms of how many deer were taken and how many were taken by a few people. If people have, you know, we vote with our feet and we vote numbers, there are far more people that enjoy the outdoors on Block Island without a firearm or a bow.
Mhm.
And I think we've got this idea that we're gonna get rid of all the deer with hunting. It's not gonna happen. So I'd like to see the balance shift more toward non-lethal recreation during the hunting season. I think we give, you know, it's not safe, you know, I mean, we all take risks, right? And I'm tired of feeling like when I go for a walk that I might go in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, I was walking the West Beach recently and I came out, there was somebody parked, they were hunting on the federal property and they were parked on the town land. And that access isn't supposed to be for anybody but residents in the shore. So anyway, bottom line is, I think we should have fewer hunting days and no weekend hunting.
Terrific. Thank you, Chris. Yes, please.
My name is Peter Gemp. My wife likes to walk, and the only time she feels safe walking is on the weekends. When she does walk during the week, she looks like a friggin' pumpkin because it's just not safe.
Yeah.
When people do hunt and they are not from here and they do want to take a deer and they do see a deer on another property, and I've hunted for years here, and it's, you know, it does get shot and drug over the wall, and it's just not right. I think that weekend hunting is just going to be very dangerous, and as like Chris said, and my pop always said, once the camel gets his nose in the tent, he's in and you're out. And it's gonna start off with one weekend archery, and then next year it's gonna be muzzle loading, and they're gonna ask for another weekend, and then it's gonna be another weekend, and turn into shotguns. And if we took 394 deer this year, do we really need to hunt on weekends? I think that's a bunch of
Yeah. I know where you were going.
right. I don't think we need it. Just on social media, two people said that one said he took 100, one said he took 102. So what is it, $150 a tail? So that comes out to what, $30,300? Do we really need to hunt on weekends? I just think it's asinine. I don't believe in it. I think it's extremely bad idea. And like I say, I'm a hunter myself and I don't believe in it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Before we start talking about, go ahead, Tristan. No, please.
I can make a motion that the people in the room just strike the weekend hunting.
So we don't have to act on it. We're not required to add those days into our schedule. My opinion about it is that I'm not hell no weekends, but I gotta tell you, just sort of sticking weekend dates onto the calendar without a real proposal around safety, enforcement, a clear communication plan, that kind of stuff. I and Marianne, I don't know whether you have thought about this, but to me, before this is properly before us, I would have to I would have to see a lot of that. You know, that's my feeling about it.
So I would add, going in that direction. You know, we improved the signage at, Bean Point. To put up this year, last year, there was a piece of paper this big with a picture of the hunting area that you had to know to look for, basically. I went looking for it, I found it, but it was tiny, so I felt very much like if you were a walker out here, you might not realize that there's hunting out there, because that is federal property. So I did ask Marianne at an earlier meeting if they could address that. She and the police chief and the director of public works, they all did address that. There's a very large blaze orange sign there now that announces that there's hunting and the dates. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Is that we want to move in that direction where we have a lot more people out there who are looking for glass floats or wanting to walk in the winter. And I agree, we need to have, I even wonder whether, I don't even think everybody who lives on the island understands what the orange flag flying at the police station means. Nor do I think that everybody remembers to drive by there and check that before they take their dog for a walk, right? So I think it should be more prevalent, like maybe there should be something when you get off the ferry at the visitor center that says today's a hunting day, and pick up your map of where that is hunting, or scan this QR code and go to the website that tells you where the hunting is, so that we can just be a little bit more transparent about the information. Like, with these numbers, I don't think we should cut back on any hunting. I think we need to keep in mind too, that 318 deer were taken by Black Island hunters. But you said there were 3 hunters who took the majority of those deer, right?
About 250.
So if one of those people breaks their ankle next year, we're not doing these kind of numbers, right? And if you have any interest in eradicating the herd or reducing the herd, I'm just gonna be blunt, we can't be relying on two people to do this for us. So we have to, we have to find some sort of balance here, but certainly information is the most important thing right now.
A plan. If I think if we're going to make a fundamental change, and this is at least philosophically a fundamental change, it ought to be pursuant to a plan that includes robust safety, robust communication, it's robust enforcement, robust commitment from DEM. That's my opinion. So for me, I have no interest in adding weekends here. That's liable to, I assume is likely to take time to put together. Is that right, Marianne? Marianne?
Sure.
Yeah.
I was writing things
So
down.
you're proposing we just take
Yeah.
no action on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because the dates that we're going to approve, I'm just looking at them again and do not include that weekend. Is that correct? All right.
Just one question. Have we done a count? Have we had a deer count?
If we knew somebody who could fly a helicopter, we might be able to do a count.
One of our town departments currently has good work too.
Let me talk to DEM about that. This gentleman we deal with, this Dylan Ferrara, who's here just about a year ago, March. we had him here.
Yeah.
He's really very knowledgeable. And if the council wants to invite him back for another meeting, I'm sure he'll be more than open. I can ask him and see if he has an idea and estimate as to what we have going on here. I don't think it'll be exact, but.
And what do we need to do on this concurrent deer and pheasant hunting? I'm sorry.
You just need to make a decision whether currently what you have in front of you, the calendar you have in front of you just has pheasant days as standalone hunting for pheasant, except for the January date. And if the request was to allow deer hunting and pheasant hunting on the other 3 dates.
Gotcha. Any thoughts on this, guys?
We should leave those separate.
Any comment from the, Pete?
Molly, I know it's not on the agenda tonight, but Molly said she did speak to that gentleman. Could that be put on the agenda at some point? So the gentleman that wants to have like his own hunting preserve, could that be put on an agenda at some point so people could know about that?
So
He's just guiding. He's not looking for a preserve or anything like that.
Excuse me.
Yeah, no.
That
I just,
guiding,
yeah,
could that be put on an agenda at some point so that people do know that someone is doing this? Because if one guy is doing it, then who knows if other people are gonna do it.
So I guess my best suggestion would be that you write a letter requesting it go on the agenda, because I think, I haven't had it, I did go onto the DEM website, but then also had to go to work. So,
Right.
You know, I didn't have a chance to vet out, you know, like if they're following all the DEM laws and they're following all of our town laws and they're stopping and registering at the police station and they all have hunting licenses and they're
But
it's not something that like we can,
But it's,
but yes, I would say just write a letter so that we have it. Would that be the correct format, right? To like write a letter and then we can like address whether we're gonna put it on.
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what we would agenda. I mean, if what you're saying
Right,
is,
that's what
do you,
I'm trying to say
do you want us to try to make it more clearer to the community that there are guides bringing hunters out? You know what I mean? I'm,
and charging money for it. Yes.
right. Okay, we'll work on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Terrific, thanks. Bill?
I think probably what Pete's saying is should guides have to be licensed or something, or does it be done?
Yes,
That was
yes.
more your
Yeah.
question than the individual.
Yeah,
part.
yeah. Chris? Hmm?
Just very quickly, I know it kind of veered off topic here, Chris Blaine. Currently, there are no regulations and there are no rules. It's
Great.
the wild, wild west as far as outfitters and
Thank you.
guys.
Thank
So
you. I get it. Thank you.
DEM is in
Yeah.
the process of trying to develop them.
Yeah.
And what I am going to ask the council at another meeting is to have a moratorium on guided or outfitted hunting until such time as DEM
Hmm.
can come up with rules that can be followed.
Great, thank you.
Right now, the federal land is not allowed. But anyway, to get to the pheasant hunting. The concurrent deer and pheasant hunting day in January is one that I proposed about 10 years ago. And it's all about safety. And you've got one pheasant hunter at the table and one behind me. And I know Molly's husband has been a pheasant hunter. January is a time when there are less hunters. You're not in the rut and the foliage mostly is dead and down. It's much easier to see through the brush. If you're hunting pheasants with a dog, it's much easier to keep track of where that dog is when there's less greenery. November and December, especially in the last few years, have been warmer, they've been milder. And it's just, the rut is on. People are a little more eager to get that big buck with that big rack. In January, they're starting to drop their horns. There's less hunting pressure and there are less hunters. You're talking about 3 days out of, I think, 81. We've always had a separation. And again, this is just one person's request. I didn't see a whole lot of people supporting it. I don't see anybody here supporting it tonight. At all. I don't think that the risk is worth a couple more days of shooting deer. So I would urge you to keep it the way it is.
Thank
Keep them
you.
separate. Thank you.
All right, act on hunting calendar. Pete, come up. Thank you. No, don't apologize, man.
Good again. I just want to, just agree exactly with what Chris had just said.
Gotcha.
I was gonna say the exact same thing.
Terrific.
It's been that way, and I think it should stay that way.
Great. Thank you. All right, so we have before us the deer dates and pheasant hunting dates in a document from Millie. It appears that there is a consensus not to change the dates as proposed in this document, with requests that Mary Ann, I actually think. Chris Blaine brings this up sometimes. I just feel like we need to step up our game on the whole range of communications around this activity. I think the signage isn't good. If we're, that's my feeling. Molly's right. I mean, we probably all know in this room what the orange flag at the police station means, but I gotta tell you, I just think it's a place that I don't mean in recent history, that historically we've sort of dropped the ball a little bit on being clear. I think that's particularly it appears to be the case in certain areas with certain hunts, but I just think it's something that we have to work on. But I would make a motion to approve the deer dates as set forth in the memo provided to us by Millie. Do you want me to read the dates?
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
Just make one comment.
Could you use the mic, please? Can you use the mic, please? No one will be able to hear you.
Sorry.
Sorry, my leg's not working. How about we put an orange flag down by the boat also?
Cool.
Just a thought.
I think we've asked Mary Ann to work on exactly
People
that.
would wonder what it is.
Yeah.
And then people would talk about it, and so on and so forth.
Sosha.
It was my understanding that when we had the fire at the harbor, excuse me, and a drone was used, and I know that there are regulations regarding the airport, but why don't we use drones to do a deer count?
I don't have any idea.
Seems cheaper and safer.
Yeah, I'm open to all of it as long as I don't have to do it. I hate to say it, but this is whatever. So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Anybody else? We have a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Now we move on to deer topic number 3. Firearm deer hunting in the Block Island Wildlife Refuge. Chris.
Chris Blaine again. I sent a proposal into the council. For years now, what federal land references as the Sandy Point unit. It's located in Plat 1, Lot 16 on the plat map, which is town land. The Saucon Pond Wildlife Refuge was created in 1972 as a wildlife refuge. And the town of New Shoreham began to allow deer hunting in that area about 15 to 20 years ago. The federal government opened up their portion of this. And about 2015, 2016, the town stopped allowing hunting out there. The council decided it wasn't really necessary. There weren't really that many deer taken. So now we have about a 90-acre parcel. And this is a map of what they call the Sandy Point unit, which means that the Fish and Wildlife Service owns about 24 acres out there. And the firearms hunting going on is basically wild, wild west. There is no enforcement. There has been no enforcement. It's federal land, so it requires, from what I understand, I could be wrong, but it requires federal enforcement officers. The boundaries are just about impossible to determine. And when I say boundaries, as Chris Littlefield brought up, people are accessing that property from the breed land, which is another portion of town land that's a wildlife refuge. And the refuge has a right-of-way to the West Beach through it from Corn Neck Road, which is for Block Island residents only. It's in the deed from Nelson Breed to the town of New Shoreham in 1972. It's not a staging area for hunting. It's not a parking lot for people who come from Maryland or Massachusetts or Vermont or wherever else they come from. The access to that property is supposed to be from the Settlers Rock parking lot. The Sandy Point, and just to be clear here, I want to make sure that everyone knows that's Sandy Point, not the North Point. There is no North Point. There never was a North Point. The boundary between the breed land and the Saucon Pond Wildlife Refuge is basically on paper. And one thing I will say is that compared to what the federal government does, the town of New Shoreham makes a real effort, contrary to what people think, to notify the public about hunting. This is the size of the sign and the color it's been up for at least 20 years. The end of West Beach Road at Andy's Way. There's one of these in the interstate waiting room. There's one at the post office. There's one at the Block Island Grocery. It's in the Block Island Times, same map, the same dates. The town has done a bang-up job notifying the public about hunting. And when you hunt on this property, which I did this year, as I have every year, you check in with the police station when you go, and you check out when you leave, which is basically how all hunting out here should be done. Because if anything happens, you know who was on the property and when. There should also be a map of all the property on Block Island deer hunted like this, but no one has ever seen fit to do it. So I have here a conservation easement from the town of New Shoreham. What happened with that land out there that the Fish and Wildlife Service owns, 20 acres I referenced, town of New Shoreham made a deal to get the North Light and that strip of land with it. They exchanged this 20-some acre parcel to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service in exchange for the North Light. And this is all here. I got this town clerk's office. Conservation easement, which was signed by my mother, says nothing about hunting. Nothing at all. Well, basically what the refuge does, Saucon Pond Wildlife Refuge was created by ordinance, 1972. It forbids hunting. It forbids disturbing wildlife. It's high time that the firearms hunting out there stopped. This can be done by Fish and Wildlife administratively, as it was done in the Grove Point unit, which is the one across from Saucon Pond. There was some conflict in there with firearms hunting. Tom Reeson was building his house. They decided that it was just too compact of an area. It was heavily traveled by bird watchers going up into the property. So they just switched it from firearms.
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife. made
Yes,
that
the U.S.
decision.
Fish and Wildlife made a determination, and they said, we're not going to allow firearms hunting anymore It's going to be archery only.
Mhm.
They could do the same thing with the Sandy Point unit. And this is what I'm here to ask the council to do.
So can you figure out who we sit down and talk to at US Fish and Wildlife? I would think that's pretty urgent.
I have all that contact information.
Right.
If you need it.
Mhm.
Well, what I'm asking the council to do is the director of this region, her name is Carrie Schwab, and she is the new director of the National Wildlife Refuge Complex in Rhode Island.
Mhm.
She's the one you would ask. And I'm
Terrific.
asking the council to make the request to stop firearm hunting, as the town did, to stop accessing that property through the breed land, which they have no right to do,
Mhm.
and to just convert it to archery only. A lot of people like to go walking down there during hunting season. It's a wildlife refuge.
I go there all the time.
The Glass Float Project, there's so many people down there now that there weren't before. We need to have some places on Block Island where people can walk. Not only that, we now have raptors on Block Island. We have a pair of bald eagles. We have snowy owls. We have a lot of other large raptors. That area out there was also designed for waterfowl to have a place to rest during the hunting season. And when the shotguns are going off, and they go off a lot out there, it's long distance shooting.
Mm,
If you walk out there, it's not uncommon. to
I'm
hear a
out
lot of-
there every day.
Just not out there at the right time.
I
All I'm
get-
saying is, a lot of
yeah.
people that do not know, if you're walking up the West Beach, you do not know that
Mm.
there's shotgun hunting.
Mhm.
And there is no way that you could know.
So here's my suggested approach to this. I'm not prepared to send US Fish and Wildlife a letter saying we don't want hunting there without actually sitting down and talking to them about what the issues are. I just think as a matter of form, I don't like doing that.
The request was made last year and you never heard anything back from them.
I don't
Martha
know.
Ball, in the minutes of the meeting, asked why they can't sit down and discuss it. You never got any response.
Well,
It's just one of these benign neglect things. It's like, it's Block Island. They're not going to do anything anyway. Just run it. And that's
Yeah.
what they do.
well, I wasn't aware of that, but I can tell you that I usually take no for an answer on sitting down and talking to people. And you can make that face, Chris, but I'm doing my best here.
I'm
Really.
just going on past history. People have not responded. council.
Who was first warden last year?
What I'm trying to get across to you is this, that the town of New Shoreham stopped hunting out there because they were not getting a good return. They weren't getting many deer. And they asked the Fish and Wildlife Service to do the same thing. And Fish and Wildlife Service ignored it. And they just continued to do it. They can't do it without crossing town land. And by the ordinance that was passed by a previous town council, you're allowing that to happen. And you shouldn't be allowing that
That's
to
a
happen.
different issue than approaching US Fish and Wildlife. I think we have to do a better job of posting it. I didn't know until it was brought up about hunters using the and I walk down there every day. I didn't know that. That's helpful to know, and we have to do a better job of enforcing that.
What needs to be done is a clear path. When people go to Settlers Rock parking lot, the first year that was allowed to be hunted, you had to put a piece of paper on your windshield to show that you're hunting in the refuge, so the non-hunting public could see that on your windshield and say, oh, that's a hunter.
Mhm.
And that's how, and you parked at Settlers Rock. Well, I would just like to, maybe a meeting, you could try it. But my request is
Marianne,
pretty simple.
that sounds
I'd
like
like at our next meeting, I'd like to have some sense of who we talk to, how the scheduling is going, how clear my schedule to go, or have them here, whatever you want. But this is a priority.
But that sounds like something interesting to put down in our notification, along with signage and everything else. I don't remember that at all either, like having something in the windshield, but that would be perhaps to go back to that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions, Tristan, before we move on? Is Amy here? Oh, sorry, Robbie. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm looking at my computer. I apologize.
I'm Rob.
Sorry,
Gilpin,
Kim.
Member of the Lake Commission. I mentioned this to Mary Ann last year. I had an incident out there. I was out working on the generator at the lighthouse and, I'd been there a couple hours, so I went out early. And, went back in the lighthouse, came out the door. There was a gunshot and a round went over my head. Now,
Jesus.
by not more than 10 feet. Now, I mentioned it to Mary Ann. Unfortunately, I didn't have my phone, otherwise I would have called the police department. And by the time I wrapped things up, I just had forgotten about it. And I mentioned it to Mary Ann, and she gave me a orange vest and hat, which I pointed out wouldn't have done any good because the round came from the south and there's a 10-foot dune, so they couldn't even see me. My point is, they shouldn't have been shooting towards the lighthouse. And we're talking within 30 feet. Now, I didn't make a big stink of it. But I think if it's about security and safety, that's the most important.
Yeah.
They're gonna, and I would tell the federal government and the state, you want hunting on your property? Great. Develop your plan, develop a safety plan, have wardens here, have all the hunting you want.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a free-for-all.
Yep.
When I got back to the parking lot, there were 3 trucks sitting in the parking lot, and they weren't there when I went out, and they had Pennsylvania tags. So they're advertising on the internet, people coming here. If you want to have a program, have a program. We want to see your safety plan. When are the wardens going to be on the island?
Yep.
And you just can't willy-nilly it.
I think that's well said,
There's
Ray.
too many people
Yeah.
around.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I would not be safe out
Yeah.
at the White House. And, you know, if you're gonna make safety the issue, you gotta stick to it. And if you look at what the island's done over the years, they developed it carefully. And I agree, we need to cull the herd, but we can't give up on safety.
Sure. I couldn't agree more. Kim, I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm not gonna get rabid. Just a little historical perspective. I was on the town council when we first said that we would allow hunting in the Saucon Pond Wildlife Refuge. And it probably the only vote in 20 years that I regretted. But we had a lot of pressure for deer hunting locally, and it seemed important. But a couple of things. That change was an ordinance change that said the decision to allow it on the Saucon Pond Wildlife Refuge had to be made annually. So it's a proactive, I believe, I haven't looked at it in a long time, but it's a proactive step the town council has to make every year in order to allow anybody to hunt on the Saucon Pond Wildlife Refuge, which nobody should be. It's very clear what that refuge is for.
Billy, can you check that, please?
And
I don't mean right now, but just it's really helpful.
I had another point, but I forgot.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Just that I actually, at the same time period, generally, we had a request from local hunters led by Chris Blaine to have waterfowl hunting in that area. And it was hotly contested. And Chris and I were on the opposite sides. But tonight I stand here in agreement with him that there should not be hunting there. Oh, I know. The other point was when we first asked and said, okay, we're going to do this as a trial. We asked the U.S. Fish and Wildlife that they give us a report of how many deer were taken on that parcel specifically, so that we could gauge year to year whether or not it was worth the sacrifice of our wildlife refuge for the gain of
Sure.
controlling deer. So
Terrific. Thank you, Kim. It's very helpful. Anybody else? No? Sure, Chris, come.
Anyhow, I think the best thing to happen here would be no hunting in the Saucon Pond Refuge, the town refuge, and the federal property out there. Then you know, for Lori would have a safe place to walk during the week. And
Right.
so many people go out there now to see the seals. You know, February, I was out there
Sure.
today.
Yeah.
I saw footprints, but I did not see another person.
Yes.
And that's rare.
Yep.
But if there's ever a place on Block Island where there shouldn't be any hunting, that's it. Because you've got seals now. The seals get disturbed by fire
Mm-hmm.
reports. And then you've got the waterfowl on the pond and they get disturbed. So what's the point? What's the priority? To me, the priority is people that aren't hunting and the wildlife. I think it's a pretty simple decision.
So my priority is to do it the way we're supposed to do it. That's my priority. I'm not at philosophical odds with you. I'm telling you, there's an approach we have to take. Whether, we have to meet with the feds, or at least offer to meet with the feds with very clear that if they're not willing to, then we're going to act. But we just
Right, no,
we
I understand that.
where we're
Yeah,
sitting.
Yeah,
you know.
I just can't emphasize enough, if there's a place on Block Island that shouldn't be hunted during the winter, this is it.
I hear you.
And that's because of the
hear you.
changes in, COVID, more people out walking, the seals attracting people to that area. The priority should be non-lethal recreation.
Yes. All right, Amy. Thank you, everybody. This was terrific. It was wonderful. Amy, are you still here?
I am. Good evening.
It's your show.
Well, I'll keep it brief, probably. You should have in front of you financials through January 31st.
Yes, we do.
We're in a little bit of a slower period of the year. I don't have specific items to call your attention to tonight, but to say that in general, you will see expenditures trending ahead of last year across the board. And so on that summary page, that front page, you can see that in two different ways. The first is the percent used, 56% of budget year to date in the current year versus 53% used of budget last year at the same time. And then in that far right column, which is an index of year over year spending, you can see most of those expenditure lines tracking above 100%, meaning we're running ahead of last year's expenditures as well. And so that means we're really at the point in the year where unbudgeted or unexpected items, both big and small, are being deferred to next year. And everything gets evaluated from here through June 30th about whether we can accommodate it in the existing budget. It's a little early. It's not the first time we've been doing this in February, but we typically like to get a little bit further into the year before we start having to say no. But it's a reality of where we are. And I think that's the theme of what you're seeing in front of you with the January report.
Amy, can you give us an example of what you say no to and defer? I don't have a good handle on that. What are you talking
Since I can't see Marianne's face, she'll have to shout and kick me under the table. But an example would be in the facilities world right now, just in the last few days, talking about some replacements, whether we're doing a very small replacement or temporary fix on a building, whether we're going to do, say, a $15,000 fix that is sort of the right solution, or whether the entire project needs to be put on hold because the entire exercise was unplanned until after July 1. Because if we do it now, it's taking the place of something that was planned for the spring.
So this would be unplanned things that naturally come up.
Yeah, and we know that they do. And so we start making hard choices.
Life happens. I just wasn't sure what you were. That was very helpful.
Great. Yeah, so those kinds of things. So which, they're not, they'll all get done and they'll be prioritized and we'll keep the business of the town running. But you're making those harder choices earlier in the year, which means it's been a tough budget year and we know how we're going into the 25 budget. And so it informs that exercise as well.
Right.
But I'm happy to take questions if anyone saw something that jumped out at them.
Go ahead, Molly.
Can I ask you a budget in front of me question?
Bye, Cindy.
Have you started to meet with people about the budget process coming up at all?
Yes, based on the charter timeframe, we have all the department or most of the department submittals. And so we are going through those, meeting with department heads and building that first preliminary budget.
Okay, so I'm specifically wondering about, we have a couple of new department heads. And so I'm just, I'm thinking about the library, human services, department of, why am I drawing a blank on, what is Mike Shea?
Public Works.
Public Works. Sorry, I know he's done budgets before. But this librarian is new to our town. Human Services is a new department. Have they been brought up to speed on what the process is?
Yes, in a couple different ways. And, as you said, we have a few new people in new places and then some new departments as well. So there's both the theoretical preview that we gave people when they came on board about what to be expecting through the process. And then we've also been sitting down for more detailed nuts and bolts conversations about how to structure their requests and what things are priorities and trying to get an understanding of what their visions are for their departments.
Thank you.
Amy, I'll ask you the question I always ask. Is there anything here that's keeping you awake?
It's not one thing in particular today.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I think I described it, it is that condensing of available space, if you will.
Sure.
So we're losing some wiggle room, and that just makes it more challenging.
Right. Bill?
Amy, I have a question. If the capital budget line goes over, where do the funds come from? The bottom line of the budget.
Sure. That's not really something we have an answer for, in that, particularly on a capital project, if there's going to be an over expenditure, we need to be identifying that before we make that commitment. If you are looking at the capital tax page, which is page 23 out of 24, you'll see some of those lines that look over expended. It's actually the opposite. It's that we've held money from prior years because the project was not done. And so we're accounting for it in this year, but there's actually a revenue source or an offsetting adjustment for that, which is that we've held funds from prior years. Does that make sense? Harbors Utilities is a great example. I think that was actually budgeted in fiscal year 23. We held on to those funds because the project wasn't completed. We've expended them now in fiscal year 24. And so those two things will net themselves out at the end of the fiscal year.
So the bottom line of the capital budget, the number that's on the bottom, is there other funds or that number will not exceed, you're saying?
It won't exceed the 370, which is the budget, plus the encumbered funds that the council has authorized us to hold from prior years. And I don't have that number in front of me, but I'm happy to bring it to the next meeting.
Is that why that number doesn't reflect it on there, because there's funds elsewhere?
Exactly. So we've held dollars from prior years, and that would be the case of the Harbors Utilities. It would be the case of the fire barn work. Library improvements we had prior year money set aside for that. Technology, we had prior year money. Mansion Beach bathrooms had prior year money. So
where do you go to find that though when you're looking at the budget? Because when I look at it, I looked on the capital, it doesn't show it there. So where do you find the money?
it's actually not a budget item. It becomes a fairly detailed accounting difference between governmental and budgetary accounting, and then some adjustments in the audit that we make. There's actually a page that I can show you that shows those encumbered funds, which is part of our fund balance, and that as those expenditures in the current year flow through, they unwind the prior year's reserve, if you will. So it becomes outside of the fiscal year 24 budget. In a way, we keep them on the page so that we can see everything the town spends, but it's not a budgetary basis of accounting.
Because basically the money's been reserved and is sitting there waiting for the project to be ready to undertake.
Yes.
That makes sense, thank you, I appreciate it, but is there, you would think there'd be some page that shows that. So you, in other words, when you look at it, it looks like it's overspent, and when you explain it clearly, it's not, but there's not another page that you provide that shows that what's in, or maybe I didn't know where it was, that shows, how much is in reserve or.
It's almost like a column that would say previously allocated or something like that.
Sure. So if we did a balance sheet with this income statement, which we don't traditionally do, but I'm happy to bring one next month and we can point to where those funds are set aside on the balance sheet is one place that you find it. And then the other place is we can pull out the 6/30/23 audited financials, which actually adds that column. So when you look at the year end, it actually has that column of using prior year's encumbrances. And that's a page in our financial statements, our audited financial statements. But it's not something we traditionally look at monthly.
Thank you.
Tristan, any questions? No, anybody else? Amy, you're the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We move on to the report of our town manager.
Okay, I want to just, same thing here, go through a few items on this report to bring to the council attention. Everyone's been relatively extremely busy in recent months, in the recent months. We have some good news is Chief Dean has spoken to the Colonel Weaver with Rhode Island State Police, and they have committed to have our weekend state police here.
Great.
We do have them on 4th of July weekend, and we also have them, in the past few years, we've had them in the August 3-day weekend. The extra troopers we have in additional to the two, as a reminder to the council, they do charge us for that. We will definitely follow the same form and procedure in that case. Also, just to update the council, Keith has been involved with this, but Block Island Conservancy, working with Mike Shea and Sean McGarry, and also what's called Ecodrum is the name of the company. We're going to do a pilot composting program up at the transfer station, hopefully this summer. We have a permit requirement that we needed to submit to DEM that has been submitted.
Is it pretty straightforward to do?
Pretty straightforward, and DEM states on their website that they usually get a response to us. They'll get a response to us in 21 days, and I think they will. They're usually pretty good on that. Based on that, the in-vessel composting from Ecodrum will take about 30 days to get here. We're not going to order it, place that order until we get the permit.
Just for people who are watching and who are here, the Block Island Conservancy is purchasing the composting equipment.
To the tune of about 40
it-
grand.
Yeah, it is not a town expenditure. Very positive. Sean McGarry could not have been more helpful. It's a really interesting sort of next step in our waste management, waste processing.
And Block
It's
Island
terrific.
Conservancy has identified
Incredibly generous.
folks that will be the pilot. We expect this someone to do a pilot and then hopefully implement additional folks. We can take up to 500 pounds of waste a day. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. And it's an exciting project. It's a excited, kind of fun project, I think, for the island. Also, another project, this is another interesting one. And Sam Bird was the original one that mentioned this some time ago. Also, Mike, Tom, Jeff Wright from the power company, Sean McGarry took a field trip up to Concord, Mass for a demonstration with this called Trashology. And it's taking the trash and whatever they do with it, makes it usable energy. It's only about 3%. It'll allow for up to 3% coverage on the energy for us. However, it reduces the amount of trash that will eventually have to haul off island. They're looking to also, this company is looking to use Block Island as another pilot program, and we're further exploring that. That pilot, I think we're looking at a year, 18 months out, but it's also something else that staff is working with Sean McGarry at the transfer station. So that's another thing that's really will be an interesting project. Finally, I want to give kudos to Highway Department for the recent storm event. They did an excellent job in clearing the roads, and also extend to the council an invitation to attend the League of Cities and Town annual conference, which is slated for, I didn't put that in there, but it's slated for March 21st. You can go up on their website to sign up. Also, which is up on Clerk Base, it did get up there a little late, but this will be something that we'll be updating every 90 days. It's a spreadsheet that shows all the grants we applied for and the grants we've received. The spreadsheet is set up in such a manner that you can do some different data mining. You can say, show me the grants that were awarded, and they'll show you the grants that were awarded. I would encourage all council members to take a look at that. Like I said, we'll be updating that probably every 90 days. But it's really interesting on some of the grant applications we put in and what we've been awarded in the past few years, and what's ongoing with applications. And I think that's all I have for tonight.
Great. Any questions? Bill?
I think I heard you right. The state police committed to the weekends.
Correct.
And there was additional, I didn't hear.
Yeah, usually 4th of July weekend, we ask for additional troopers.
Is there gonna be something, I understand, I was looking through the budget that you all have, was a $25,000 cost, I believe, last year, somewhere around that state police.
I would ask Amy to answer that better. She has the budget in front of her, know about the 25,000 or what it costs for us.
So looking on the budget there, there was nothing budgeted, but there was a $25,000 cost in that. My only point, I'm sorry, Amy, go ahead.
Yes, on page 13, if anyone wants to look at that.
And that wasn't budgeted, and my problem isn't that we spent money on that, but I think if we're gonna spend money on the state police, I think the chief should be involved and should be laid out exactly what it was. That's a lot of money for, if that was just for the 4th of July weekend.
That was 2 weekends, 4th of July and the Victory Day.
Right, and the point being is, I think that if the state police coming out, that should be coordinated with the chief of police, what we actually need. If I'm correct in speaking to the prior chief, he was somewhat shocked at the money and what the cost was and how it was. So I think we want to be mindful of that. That's a lot of money, and I think, not that we don't need it, but we want to make sure it's spread out appropriately what we need. And that's never, by the way, that's never been in the past, but I'm aware of that. The state police were billing us for other times, other than if you had a chief of police or something like that, so.
It's what has happened.
It's not reflected against the administration, I'm just saying in general from that end. We always had pretty good cooperation. We weren't getting billed for cars. We weren't getting billed for a lot of administrative stuff and so forth with it. And that is not at all, that's not at all, a matter of what this administration is. It's a matter of where things are going differently than what they have been in the past.
This is the $25,000.
$25,000, we didn't have budgeted. You got a bill for $25,000 last year, for the state police.
Just for clarification, Bill, and the state police have billed us in previous years for when they came out on 4th of July weekend. Last year wasn't the first time.
They billed you the year before?
They've always billed us on 4th of July weekend, yeah. And that goes back some years, and also the August.
That's the case. I'd like to know what we paid in the year before, because $25,000 is a lot of money for 2 weekends. And it'd be interesting to see what we did pay in the year before. So if possible, if we could take a look at that and we could see where it's going from a budgeting standpoint.
So what they usually have the original state police. The chief is the one that orders additional state police. And it was July 4th and the August weekend. Those are the ones that are extra that we do pay for. And that's been going on.
which I don't have an objection to that, but I just think that the chief last year was pretty shocked at $25,000 what he expressed to me. So what I'm saying is, I think we have to be active in exactly what we need, knowing that, and there's nothing wrong with it, what we're paying for. So if, whether it be, now say, hey, what can you send down? You know, if you're paying for it, you need to make sure it's built in, so you're utilizing, you know, you're paying for it. So you need to know exactly what you're asking for and take some forethought from that end of it. I think in the past, what could you send down? And, like I said, according to Chief Lynch, he was pretty shocked at because I believe it's not just that, you're paying for, I believe, the cars, you're paying for administration, do you have the list, Mary, what they charge for?
I don't have it in front of me, no, but they do charge for the vehicles and they do charge, there was an administrative fee they charge, and that could be because of taxes. It's my understanding that the chief orders what the chief chooses for those weekends. So it's up to the chief and chief's decision to make that.
Do we have that budgeted in this current year?
Amy just said yes.
Amy, how much?
No.
You know,
Let's just break down our fiscal years. The fiscal year in front of you, the financial statements, our fiscal year 24, it was not budgeted. We will be anticipating a budget line going into fiscal year 25 based on the bills that we've received so far this year.
So we had whatever $25,000 in unbudgeted expenses for state police
Correct.
in this fiscal year?
Yep.
And they've been charging in the past.
Not consistently.
Well,
And we can pull up the detail of that over the years.
that'd be
that's-
very helpful, I think.
Great.
And just for the record, I don't have any objection to that, but it wasn't budgeted last year, and I think that, you know, the chief needs to really sit down and take a look at what he's gonna need, and so we can budget appropriately.
My sense is that he's been very engaged, it sounds like, with the colonel, right?
Yeah, all the chiefs in the past have been very engaged with the colonel, no matter who the colonel is.
Amy, can I ask you, on a different topic, which budget does the deer tail fee come out of?
Sure, it's in the administration budget,
Okay,
and the deer tail line is going to be at the top of page 10.
oh, sorry, going the wrong way. And so this year, oh, there it is, sorry, we had donations towards that line. Are
And the
those
council-
reflected in here?
No, so we're going to capture all the expense here in this 8,200 expense line. The
Okay.
offsetting revenue from donations
Mm-hmm.
or any amount the council has authorized in addition from contingency is going
Right.
to be an offset. But so that we can always go to one place and say, what was the deer management cost for this year? Everything on the expense side is going to be so far in that 34,050.
Okay. And can you explain that? Is it true that only Block Island hunters can collect that fee? Like, can an off-island hunter get paid for the deer?
I actually cannot answer that.
I had always assumed it was Block Island Hunters, but yeah.
What's that?
It's my understanding.
Okay, that's what I've been told, and I was.
Yeah,
wanted
that's
to confirm
that's I couldn't point to an ordinance though to say that, but that's always been my sense.
It's
Right.
my understanding. But yeah, I'd have to find a piece of paper that says that.
Thanks.
It's a good question, important question. Is there anything else? Real quickly, on item 13, council engagement with sea level rise. They would, again, very much like someone to come to their meetings regularly. one of the things I would ask is, maybe it would be worthwhile, no. I mean, I would go to more, if I knew, if I were really paying attention to when they were, in other words, I have a number that I'm, planning, I get an email about, and so on, some of them I get an email about, but I don't know whether sea level rise is in that Secretary of State program that you can sort of get notices, so I could do that. Okay. All right. But I frankly, for me personally, I do not want to commit to being a member of the Sea Level Rise Committee. I just don't have the bandwidth for it, honestly. I just, yeah, the same here, I go, but yeah. We do have, I think they kicked off a member off of the police advisory. Tristan, did you hear anything about that? We have an alternate position on sewer, and similarly an alternate position on water. And I'm hopeful, because the last time around we had Phoebe, and there are people out in the community who can really add a lot to an area that could really use bright and engaged people. We're spending a lot of money on these things, as we should, but this is an important area for the town. So thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, guys. Thank you.